Hello, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about negatives, fractions, and checking solutions on a TI-83. The objective is that by the end of this video, you should be able to use a TI-83 or 84 to simplify expressions containing negatives or fractions and to check solutions to an equation. The first thing we're going to talk about is how to use fractions in a TI. What we're going to do is we're going to press Math, press Enter for Frac, and press Enter again to simplify. To prevent errors in a calculator, always put your fractions in parentheses. So we get our calculator, we turn it on, I go ahead and clear out my screen by pressing the clear button, which is below the down arrow. Press clear, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to simplify this fraction right here. So I'm going to open a parentheses, I'm going to type in, you won't be able to see all this at the same time, 234 divided by 456, close my parentheses, and you should see this now in your calculator. Then we're going to go down to the Math option, which is below the alpha button, because we want to do some math on this fraction. So we press the Math button. Press Enter once we see the word FRAC, which is short for fraction. See this little arrow right here? That means we want to convert the previous fraction into a simplified one. So we press Enter. You should now see a fraction, in parentheses, an arrow, and the word frac. Again, the way we get there is we go Math, and we press Enter on frac. Now that we're in this screen, we press Enter one more time, and we get our simplified fraction, which is 39 over 76. So, the simplified answer to this fraction right here is 39 over 76. Now what we're going to do is we're going to evaluate some expressions that have fractions in them. As a review, to evaluate an expression means to find how much the expression is equal to, its simplest form. So we're going to evaluate 4 over 35 plus 3 over 140. So we get our calculator, turn it on, press clear to clear the home screen, and we type in parentheses 4 divided by 35 plus parentheses 3 divided by 140. Press Enter, and we get this decimal right here. But what we want is we actually want our answer in a fraction form. So we go back to our calculator, we press Math, Enter, Enter. And what the calculator just got through doing for us is turning this expression into a reduced fraction. So that saves us a whole lot of time because we don't have to go through and find a common denominator and then add it and then reduce. All we have to do is type it in the calculator and it gives us our final answer, 19 over 140. Now for the second example, we have 2/3 parentheses 0.75 minus 27 over 8. What I ask you to do is when you have an expression that requires you to simplify several parts at the same time, I ask you to go ahead and evaluate the expression using PEMDAS. So we're going to simplify the inside of the parentheses first, giving us 2/3. And let's figure out what 0.75 minus 27 over 8 actually is equal to. Again, I'm not going to type all this in my calculator at once because that's going to lead to a couple set of parentheses, actually 3 sets of parentheses, which might get a little confusing. Instead, I'm just going to simplify the inside, figure out what that answer is, and then multiply the outside by the inside. Let me show you. So we get our calculator, again we're going to clear it out, and again I'm going to find just the inside. So I'm going to go 0.75 minus 27 over 8. And we're going to turn that into a fraction, and we get negative 21 over 8. So this leaves us with 2/3 times negative 21 over 8. So now we have 2/3 times negative 21 over 8. Now this is a preview for the next section, but we can actually type this in as two different fractions by putting the first one in parentheses times the second one in parentheses. Let me show you. I have 2/3, close my parentheses, times, I don't even have to press the times button. I can just put the two parentheses together, which means to multiply. Now notice the negative button. I want to show you that real quick. Since it's a negative 21/8, we have to use the negative button, which is right next to the enter sign. So again, the negative is right next to the enter. It is not the subtraction sign, which is above the plus sign. Again, we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a second. So we have 2/3 times negative, I type the negative button, 21/8. Close my parentheses. And as a shortcut, we can actually press math, enter, enter, and it'll actually give us our answer right away, -7/4. So without having to do much work at all, we actually used our calculator to evaluate this expression. It gives us -7/4. Here's an example for you to try on your own. Go ahead and pause the video, work it out, and press play when you're ready to see the answer. Okay, so I got my calculator. I went and pressed the clear button. And I'm going to find out what 5/3 plus 8 is first. So I go parentheses, 5/3 plus 8. We can type math, enter, enter to turn it into a fraction. We get 29/3. So our intermediate step, or our middle step, is to get 24/7 times 29/3. So I'm going to go ahead and make my first fraction also in parentheses. I'm going to multiply those two in my calculator, 24/7 times 29/3. So we get 24, put parentheses, 24/7, parentheses, 29/3. That means we're going to multiply those two fractions, and we want our answer to be in a fraction form, so we go math, enter, enter, and we get our final answer is 232/7. Now let's talk about negatives in a Texas Instrument calculator. Texas Instrument calculators think that negatives and subtraction are two different things. Let's locate both symbols on our calculator. On your calculator, this sign right here means negative. This sign right here above the plus sign means to subtract. Let me go ahead and show you that a little bit more clearly. This button means a negative, and this button means to subtract. So let's talk about when to use subtraction and when to use negative signs in the calculator. When you're subtracting the second number from the first, we use subtraction. So notice the 3 is being taken away from the 8. We want to go ahead and use the subtraction button. And 8 minus 3 should be 5. So if you go 8, use the subtraction button, minus 3, and press enter, we should get 5. And notice we do get 5. Suppose you use the button incorrectly. You go 8, -3, press enter. Notice the calculator gives you an error. It says error syntax. Syntax is the way you put it in. You have two options, quit or go to. If we press the down arrow button and press enter on go to, you'll notice it shows that we typed in a negative and not a minus sign. So what I have to do is change that to a minus and press enter, and we notice we get 5. So anytime your calculator gives you an error, you've got two choices. You can either press enter for quit or down to go to. And if you go to it, sometimes you can find out what you typed in wrong, sometimes not. Let's take a look at the next example, -9 plus 12. So when to use negatives? Use negatives when the first number is negative or the first number in a set of parentheses is negative. So for example, -9 plus 12. So we use the negative sign, -9 plus 12. Press enter. And we get 3. Which makes sense because -9 plus 12 is 3. Now let's take a look. What happens if we tried to use -9 plus 12? Notice it gets this A and S thing. That means it pulls up your second answer, or your first answer. So it pulls up 3, and it's going to go 3 minus 9 plus 12, which isn't what we want. So if you see this A and S when you try to put in a negative, it means you typed in minus sign instead of the negative sign. And again, A and S means that it's just pulling up the answer of 3. So let's take a look at the next one. 3 plus 2, negative 3 plus 4. We can actually type all that in since there's nothing too complicated, no double sets of fractions. We can type all that in at once. 3 plus 2, parentheses, negative 3 plus 4. And press enter. And we get 5. Which makes sense because negative 3 plus 4 is 1, times 2 is 2, plus 3 is 5. And the calculator automatically did PEMDAS for us. For our other example, negative 3 minus 4, negative 5 minus 6. Got to be real careful about typing in all those negative signs. It's negative 3 minus 4, parentheses, negative 5 minus 6. When we press enter, we should get negative 5 minus 6 is negative 11, times negative 4 is positive 44, minus 3 should be 41. When we press enter, we get 41, so the calculator did get the answer typed in correctly. Here are a couple of examples for you to try on your own. Please go ahead and work them out, pressing pause, and when you're ready to see the answer, please press play. Okay, for the first one I did negative 3.75 minus 4.68. Press enter, and I got negative 8.43. For the second one, I did 4 minus 5, parentheses, negative 6.72 minus 3.19. And I got 53.55 for the second answer. Before we can talk about the next section, I've got some vocabulary and then some steps to look at. So vocabulary is a variable term. That's our vocabulary term for this. Variable term is a term of an expression or equation that has a variable. So for the equation 4 minus 3x plus 7 equals 2x minus 5, what are the variable terms? Well, the answer is the variable terms are negative 3x and 2x. So again, our variable terms are negative 3x and 2x. Notice I call that a negative 3x because outside of the calculator world we can consider subtraction a negative sign, but as far as the calculator is concerned they're totally different. So again, it's negative 3x and positive 2x. We're about to start talking about checking solutions using a Texas Instrument calculator, but before we can do that we need to review the steps to solving an equation. The steps of solving an equation is, first thing we're going to do is we're going to simplify both sides of the equation. We're going to do this by distributing and by combining like terms. If there are variables on both sides, then what we're going to do is we're going to add or subtract the variable term from both sides of the equation. Then we're going to solve the equation in SATMAP order, the opposite of PEMDAS, and we're going to check our solution by substituting it into the equation, and our left and right sides should be equal. So now we're actually going to solve this equation, and then we're going to check our answer using the calculator. Remember, to solve the equation, what we're going to do is we're going to simplify both sides of the equation first. Now to do that, on the left-hand side, I notice I've got a set of parentheses and a number outside the parentheses. So I'm going to go ahead and distribute negative 0.3. That leaves us with 4x, negative 0.3 times 9, you can use your calculator, gives us negative 2.7, and then negative 0.3 times negative 0.7x gives us positive 0.21x is equal to 2x minus 5.4. Now we're going to combine our like terms to simplify the left-hand side. 4x plus 0.21x gives us 4.21x. Minus 2.7 is equal to 2x minus 5.4. And we notice we've simplified both sides as far as they can go. We can't combine the 4.21x and the negative 2.7 because they're not like terms. The 4.21 has an x next to it, but the negative 2.7 doesn't. So we've simplified it as far as it can go on both sides. So what we need to do now is make sure we have all of our x's on one side of the equation. We notice we have a 4.21x on the left-hand side and a 2x on the right-hand side. So I need to get rid of one of those x's. I'm going to choose the smaller one usually, so I'm going to choose the 2x. To get rid of the 2x, I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. Again, you can use your calculator since you have it for this. But I have 4.21x minus 2x gives me 2.21x minus 2.7 equal to negative 5.4. I'm going to continue solving by getting x by itself in PEMDAS order, which is SADMEP. Solve it in SADMEP order, which is PEMDAS backwards. So I'm going to undo subtraction addition first. Now I cannot subtract 2.21 because it has an x next to it. But I can get rid of the minus 2.7 by adding 2.7 to both sides. Negative 2.7, positive 2.7 cancel, leave me with 2.21x is equal to negative 5.4 plus 2.7 leaves me with negative 2.7. My final step is to divide both sides by 2.21. Now this is where the calculator comes in handy. There's no way I want to try to figure that out on my own. So we have negative 2.7 divided by 2.21. Get your calculator, you go negative 2.7 divided by 2.21. And we're going to convert that to a fraction if possible. So we go math, enter, enter. And we get our final answer as x equals negative 270 over 221. So x is equal to negative 270 over 221. Now hopefully that's our final answer, but we want to be for sure. So to be for sure that that is absolutely our correct solution to this equation, we need to substitute negative 270 over 221 in for all of the x values. Well, that's kind of ridiculous to do by hand. So the luckily we can use our calculator to substitute this for us. I went ahead and typed out the solution, and I've written the steps for checking the solutions in the calculator. Now that looks like a lot of work to do, but as soon as you see me work it out, you'll realize it's really not that much work and it'll save us a ton of time, because again, we do not really want to substitute negative 270 over 221 in for all of those x values. So what we're going to do is we're going to type the solution in the calculator. Well, it's already there, negative 270 over 221. We're going to press the STOW button. Now the STOW button means to store, so we're going to store STO, and we should see a little arrow showing up, and the ANS again means that we're using the answer from before. So we're storing negative 270 over 221, storing it into whatever variable we want to store it into. Now since our equation used x, I'm going to store it as x. Now x is next to your alpha button, your green alpha button here. You press X. So again, those buttons were STO. Above your on button, should see an arrow. ANS again means that we used our previous answer. And then we type the X button, which is located next to the alpha button, and we press enter. So what it did is it stored negative 270 over 221 as a decimal in for x. So every time the calculator sees x, I'm just showing you this, enter, it's going to show us negative 1.21719457, which is the decimal form of our answer. What we need to do now is type in the left-hand side of the equation. So let me go ahead and type that out. 4x minus 0.3 parentheses 9 minus 0.7x parentheses, and press enter. I get this number. That means the left-hand side of the equation is equal to negative 7.8434, so on and so forth. Now I'm going to type in the right-hand side of the equation, 2x minus 5.4. When I press enter, I should end up with the exact same number as the left-hand side. I should end up with negative 7.843, blah, blah, blah. So let's see if when I press enter, I get the correct answer. Enter, this is great news. The left-hand side when I typed it in is equal to the right-hand side when I typed it in. That means our solution of negative 270 over 221 is actually the solution to this equation. It's an ugly solution, but it's okay because it checks out. Here's an example for you to try. Go ahead and work it out, pressing pause, and when you're ready to see the answer, please press play. All right, for this example, it's really important to notice that minus 0.4, we can treat it as plus negative. That's going to be helpful when we distribute in our calculator. And we can treat the minus 6.9 as plus negative 6.9. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to simplify the right-hand side of the equation first. So I get 7x plus 6 is equal to, since the left-hand side is already simplified, I can just bring all that information down. X, now it's plus negative 0.4 times positive 3. That gives us minus 1.2x. Negative 0.4 times negative 6.9. And again, remember, it was negative 0.4. It's a negative 0.4 since it has a minus sign in front of it. We have to type that in our calculator since we're going to be multiplying as a negative 0.4 times a negative 6.9. Anytime you multiply two numbers that have negative signs in front of them inside your calculator, you have to use negative signs. Otherwise, the calculator will give you an error message. So that gives us 2.76. So again, we multiply negative 0.4 times negative 6.9, we get positive 2.76. So we go to our work right here, and we get plus 2.76. Now we're going to go ahead and keep on simplifying that right-hand side. X minus 1.2x gives us negative 0.2x plus 2.76. My least amount of x's is the negative 0.2x, so I'm going to get rid of that by adding 0.2x to both sides. 7x plus 0.2x gives me 7.2x. Bring down my plus 6 is equal to, those cancel, 2.76. Now, what I need to do is get x by itself, and again we're going to solve in SADMAP order. So we're going to undo subtraction and addition first. We're going to undo the plus 6 by subtracting 6 from both sides. We can't get rid of the 7.2 because it's 7.2 times x. So we get rid of the plus 6 by subtracting 6 from both sides. Gives us 7.2x is equal to 2.76 minus 6. We get our calculator. You could do that in your head if you wanted to. Minus 6 gives us negative 3.24. So we get negative 3.24. Divide both sides by 7.2. And we get our final answer, negative 3.25 divided by 7.2. Excuse me, you could just type that in, but I'm going to go ahead and type in negative 3.24 divided by 7.2. Math, enter, enter, and I get my final answer is negative 9 over 20. So negative 3.24 divided by 7.2 gives me negative 9 over 20, which is what x should be equal to. So in the end, hopefully when we check our solution, x is equal to negative 9 over 20. So let's go ahead and check our solution. To do that, we're going to take negative 9 over 20, and we're going to store it by pressing the STO button right here. Now notice negative 9 over 20 was already in the calculator, so all I had to do was press the STO button, and it says ANS, which means we take negative 9 over 20, which is our answer, and we're going to store it in for x. Press enter. We get negative 0.45, which is our decimal answer for the solution to the equation. So negative 0.45 is the value of x, and we're going to go ahead and type in the left-hand side of the equation, 7x plus 6. Press enter. I'm going to type in the right-hand side, x minus 0.4. We get 3x minus 6.9. Press enter, and we get 2.85, and thankfully we see that our left-hand side and our right-hand side are equal, which means we solved the equation correctly. X equals negative 9 over 20 is our solution because we checked it in the calculator.